I am 21 years old and have friends my age and even friends that are 10 years older than me telling me that their standards in dating were just someone who is alive and consenting and eventually not obese. You might think they are just joking, but they are dead serious. On social media, I came across a post of someone asking men and women about their standards in dating. While women were able to pin down their exact preferences, most men were like, well, as long as someone wants me. I'm a younger man and have my fair share of standards for a girlfriend. Has men's confidence in dating really reached an all-time low nowadays? Story 1. The other wrist. Why have men's standards in dating seemed to have drastically lowered? I am a 21-year-old man and have friends my age, and even friends who are 10 years older, telling me that their standards in dating are just someone who is alive and consenting. There's a difference between what we want and what we can get. Maybe your friends had higher standards until they learned the hard way that they couldn't find, get, or keep someone who met those standards. Story 2. When you start walking through a desert, a muddy puddle is not particularly tempting. However, if you have been walking through the desert for the last 2 days, that muddy puddle might be quite refreshing. Story 3. There are two sides to men's standards: whom they date and whom they'd marry. Men tend to have low standards for whom they date but much higher standards for whom they would be in a relationship with or marry. Story 4. I think dating applications have put many men's confidence and self-esteem through the shredder. Also, I think seeing those opinions and seemingly sky-high expectations from women on social media on top of that has made a lot of men essentially give up. So at this point, men are just happy with a woman that appears to like them and give them attention of any kind. I personally worry I've waited too long to put myself out there, and the more I hear and read about the state of modern dating, the more I'm content just being single. I've got good people in my life and the best pets anyway. Story 5. Funny because I get judged for being a guy with standards and told, just go have sex with anyone by most guys. At this point, I've given up because most people I've encountered get unsettled when I tell them I've never had a relationship. Story 6. When you are chronically single for years, it does a number on you. This is probably the same as smoking and drinking in how it affects your health. I feel like most men nowadays are extremely lonely. Only about half of us have a lot of money to flaunt and impress people with while the rest struggle. I struggle to make money and have a house all by myself, so I'm not even interested in dating. That's literally it. I work out all the time, have a huge friend group, have a lot of hobbies, and am generally fulfilled. But I don't have a lot of money, so I check myself out of the dating game. You are expected to be successful. What woman wants someone who is struggling? Even though he works all the time, he can't afford things. How many guys can hit all these marks to be seen as worthy? I seriously only want someone I enjoy being around and am mildly attracted to. That's about it. I don't need a woman to have to hit all these marks. But I've learned over the years, I'm simply not good enough. More and more men will continue to check out. Story 7. Yeah, that's the thing though. If you have no options, why would you set standards to make the seemingly impossible even more difficult? Then again, I suppose it couldn't hurt to have sky-high standards if you know it won't happen anyway. I just think it's due to the market. Not sure if it's a demographic issue or what, but I'm almost positive the ratio in online dating is at least 3 to 1, men to women, actually probably worse. So, yeah, it makes sense to keep your options as open as possible because you're playing with a distinct disadvantage. Story 8. It's funny you say this because you hear from a lot of women that the bar is in hell for men. In other words, that women's standards for a partner nowadays are incredibly low. So apparently everyone sucks. Story 9. This is nothing new. I'm 58 years old. Women have always dated who they wanted. Men have always dated who they can. Looking back at my dating life, it really boiled down to 2 requirements. 1. Not obese. 2. Interested in dating me. And this was in the 1980s. Story 10. The only standards I think anyone should apply when dating are the same as they have for any other human being. If you wouldn't hang out with that person given the choice, then you shouldn't date them. It's when people start applying a checklist of traits that someone has to have that people get into trouble. I've always approached dating with this idea, and it has served me well. I never said someone wasn't good looking enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't rich enough, and so on. I took each person for themselves and went from there. You'd be amazed how much your dating pool and ability to find relationships increase when you throw that checklist out the window. Story 11. More women than ever have checked out of dating entirely. The phrase one of a fiancé's friends used was, "You're not competing with other guys. You're competing with my peace." She didn't find dating satisfying any longer after having dates with men who couldn't be bothered to answer questions or try to carry a conversation at all. I kind of get it, though. Online dating has put a really fine point on it. Story 12. Studies have shown that women are much more willing to be single long-term and place much less priority on dating than men these days. Dating has always been a skewed market, with women holding most of the power. Now, add in their willingness to be single, the social acceptance of staying single or dating other women, and the fact that they are increasingly becoming the primary earners in their households. You end up with a dating market heavily skewed in their favor. Men who can't adapt to this change and still expect the traditional roles of breadwinner and protector are really struggling. Story 13. I wouldn't fully say it's standards that go down. Rather, it's the reality of adulthood setting in. You can't stay 21 forever. People get busy, stressed, older, tired. Jobs change, you gain responsibilities, and the idea of fun shifts. Most standards are relatively superficial anyway. Story 14. Men and women receive different reactions when they express their standards and preferences. Men are encouraged to pursue women and seek romantic relationships. Women are advised to value themselves and feel comfortable living single. Story 15. Well, I've noticed as men age, their standards go down. That's not a good way to put it. It's more like we have become less picky about the little things. When I was 21, I was very picky. I preferred redheads and wanted them to have a perfect body and not be mentally unstable. Once I got into my 30s, I found I didn't have those picky preferences. There's beauty to be found in everyone. Story 16. Probably because they realized having a deep emotional connection is better than just dating someone for their looks. But hey, at least we can all agree on one thing. Pizza is a universal love language. Story 17. Get off dating apps. I used all of them through my 20s into my 30s, and those places just make you feel terrible about yourself. Figure out what you want to have high standards about. Remember, unicorns aren't real. However, if you have realistic views on what you want from a partner and what a partner can offer you, then it becomes a lot easier to meet someone that meshes well with you. Story 18. Because women have too many options. Dating apps, guys from the grocery store, guys at work, there's almost always someone there to give her attention. So they're allowed to be as selective as they choose. Guys, you're lucky if any woman tries to come up and talk to you that isn't selling something or asking for directions. The last woman I was with this past year, I found out something. She was texting a friend and other guys while we were together. Same pictures she sent me and everything. She was looking for other men and is now with some other guy that drives a Ferrari. I had simple standards. Someone pretty, funny, and someone I can connect with. Nowadays I can't believe I'm saying this, but I can't be bothered anymore. I don't believe exclusivity exists anymore. All I want is to hook up and leave because dating and meeting women is just frustrating. Story 19. The dating world is in shambles. Dating applications are destroying men's confidence and self-esteem while pushing women's egos to the absolute maximum. Then there's the fact that most men are very hesitant to approach women in public settings due to fear of being creepy, which has been an increasing concern lately with everything we see on social media. And sometimes people are just busy. So with low self-esteem, limited time, limited ways of meeting people, and limited interest from women, men take what they can get. Story 20. I think if you use dating apps and women all choose the same men and ignore the rest begin to get desperate. I don't use them as an older guy. If anything, my standards have gone up as I have learned to be self-sufficient, and I see dating a woman as something that makes sense only if she adds to my life, makes it better than it is now, and doesn't come in with a list of demands or a feminist test. Also, the first time she puts the words male and toxicity together in a sentence, I will gently escort her out of my life. Story 21. Dating apps are the reason, in my opinion. The notion that you'll meaningfully connect with a woman with as little effort as swiping and exchanging a few words. Meanwhile, 90% of women are after the top 10% of men. So men are disappointed with the lack of success and will accept a relationship with any woman who's willing to go out with them. Spending most of the time between work or study and video gaming with an unhealthy dose of pornography in between, which reinforces their false belief that women are just waiting to jump onto someone's genitalia. Story 22. Why have their standards lowered so drastically? I'm guessing desperation. Women aren't taking anything anymore. They're waking up to the idea that they have options and aren't settling for a provider. They can provide for themselves just fine, so why settle anymore? Story 23. I think most guys do have some standards, but we're discouraged from sharing them. Any preference a man has is considered shallow, insecure, or just plain old sexist. Women, on the other hand, know their worth for having long lists of demands, even if they are less than desirable themselves. Story 24. Low self-esteem boys. I think boys aren't playing enough sports or engaging in physical activity as much. I have no hard evidence, but I know young men don't look people in the eye like they used to, and it makes me sad. I'm a millennial in my 30s. Story 25. They have not. A segment of men do absolutely fine in the dating world, but a large segment does not. Some of that is due to the nature of modern dating and dating applications. It is definitely harder for younger guys today, though. I'll grant that. On the flip side, if you are a decent-looking 30-year-old or older man with your life together, dating is like shooting fish in a barrel. Story 26. Both have lowered their standards as the means allow for undesirable competition. Normally, you would not entertain a loud, insecure, difficult woman or a man-child that just wants to get laid. But we created dating to experiment and, let's be honest, just indulge. In that pool, we take on all sorts. 3-time widowers, 19-year-olds just having fun, or people living on an old couch in their uncle's basement. Story 27. Bartender of 15 years here. I've consistently seen men who were 10s take home women who were 1s simply because they were the only woman available at the time. Women can simply get more quality and quantity. Most men have to settle for someone who's settling for them. Story 28. Because these individuals spend all their lives on social media, they wonder why they can't get a girlfriend instead of developing a personality or hobby and actually getting a girlfriend. They are boring, uninteresting people who can't attract anyone, so they settle for anyone who would look in their direction. People tend to settle when they lack self-confidence. This may sound rude, but a man's standards are only as high as he regards himself. Personally, I am 5'6" and have dated plenty of beautiful and successful women in my almost 3 decades. I am confident and I think I am interesting, which gets me a long way. I would never lower my standards. Story 29. They just don't really know what they want. I guarantee you could come up with plenty of alive and consenting women that they would not actually be interested in dating. Story 30. If anything, I feel like my standards have gotten higher over time, which is a shame because now I am getting older and frankly, I am going to have way more success with women who are lowering their standards over time. I spent my late 20s and early 30s kind of messing around. I never thought that much about long-term relationships or what I wanted or what I was looking for. Some of the women I dated were lovely, wonderful people. Not all. I was never that invested in any of the relationships, which is kind of a shame because there were some great women who were kind of invested in their relationship with me. As I got older, just superficially messing around seemed much less satisfying. Then I got to spend a lot of time by myself after the start of COVID-19, which completely broke me out of the habit of just moving on to the next woman. So now that I am out of the habit of habitually dating, getting back into things seems more intimidating and less valuable. I feel like I am supposed to be looking for something more serious and not waste somebody's time. But also, now I am in my 40s and I've got more gray hair and a few more pounds, and the women my age all have a lot more experience to know they aren't interested in wasting their own time with insincere people. Sometimes I still get sort of bored and lonely and enough that alive and consenting gets back on my radar as exactly what I am looking for, and I respond to a hookup ad or something, but it's definitely not something I am looking for all the time like I was 10 years ago. I had a hookup last year that was in many ways brilliant. She was super cute, got along with her, interesting person, but in some ways it was almost more nostalgic than sexy, if that makes any sense. 30-year-old me would have been absolutely blowing up her phone to get back in there the following weekend. 40-year-old me was like, it was nice to get out of the house and have coffee with somebody. Like the coffee before I took her back to my place was more exciting than everything else. Growing up is weird. Story 31. Make a dating profile and put it up. Between the, hey cutie, give me your number and Bitcoin account. Okay? Spam, you'll get a lot of really horrible comments and people. I think especially older women use internet dating to get revenge on all the men they feel wronged them in the past. So it's casual cruelty for the sake of it. Welcome to the modern United States. Story 32. Imbalance in the dating market. For many reasons, modern women are becoming comfortable being single if they don't meet a man who matches their exact preferences and who also wants them. While there are men who are single by choice, most men are not okay with being single. If their standards are so low, it's basically because their thought is sex and companionship first. Can be anyone as long as they are female, breathing, and consenting. If I happen to also like her, it's a bonus. Hence the number of jokes about men hating their girlfriend, fiancé, or wife but choosing to stay nonetheless.